I woke up one morning to 50 strangers treating my driveway like a public highway engine's dust. Honks the whole circus. And instead of calling the police, I built what looked like a toll booth and sent the HOA a bill. Yeah, that happened. And if you want to know how a retired clipboard enthusiast managed to buy me a stone gate with his own arrogance, stick around. Because this is exactly the kind of petty justice that smells like karma and asphalt. Let me back up a sec. My grandfather bought this patch of land when this place was nothing but fields and rubber trees. He paved a little road to his house with his own 2 hands, and when he died, the property fell to me. 2 acres family history, a straight shot to the highway, not fancy but honest. Years later, a developer carved the hills behind us into a subdivision I'll call busybody estates, big driveways, shiny cars, people who treat a lawn edging as a personal affront. During construction, they asked Grandpa if their trucks could use his driveway, paid him a fee, resurfaced parts of the road all perfectly above board and temporary. When construction ended, so did the agreement. For a while, everything was calm. I'd sip coffee on the porch, watch the dog sniff the yard, listen to the creek, normal life. Then a new HOA president moved in, Uncle Henry, the kind of man who wears his polo tucked in like it's armor and carries a clipboard like it's a coronation scepter. 2 months after he took over, mornings started to change. A car or 2, then 5, and then as if someone flipped a switch, a river of vehicles, SUVs, sedans, sports cars pouring down my driveway every day at rush hour, shaving off 10-15 minutes from their commute. At first, I put up a private property sign, big red, hard to miss. It lasted 48 hours before someone ripped it down. I bolted another sign to a concrete post and someone spray painted over it. I politely asked people to stop. One guy honked, another yelled that I was making life hard for him. That was the straw. Then one afternoon, an official-looking letter appeared in my mailbox on Busybody Estates' HOA letterhead signed by Uncle Henry himself. It declared in bureaucratic font and cheerful tone that after reviewing historical access patterns, my driveway had been designated as a community access point exit B, and residents were encouraged to use it to relieve traffic at the main gate. It thanked me for my cooperation. I read that letter 3 times out loud because some part of my brain hoped that hearing it would make the world right again. It didn't. The HOA had, without my consent, told hundreds of people that my private road was now their shortcut. Uncle Henry had literally announced my loss of control over my own property in writing. Calm, reasonable measures failed. Talking to him in person did nothing but earn me a look like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. So I did something practical and vindictive at once. I called my lawyer friend, the kind of guy who sees a deed and smiles like a kid with candy. We pored over the papers. The construction agreement was temporary. The developer's right-of-way notes referred to underground utilities, not the surface. There was no easement. Legally, the road was mine. But here's the delicious twist. Uncle Henry had already bolstered the HOA's own narrative by putting his declaration in writing and mailing it to residents. He'd made the problem official. That tiny arrogance, that letter became the lever I needed. If the HOA treated my road as community infrastructure, then under local rules, I had the right to impose reasonable maintenance charges on communal use. I did my homework. These regulations exist because private roads sometimes serve multiple properties and wear out. The fee had to be reasonable and tied to maintenance. I decided on $10 per entry, probably under what the real maintenance costs would justify, but perfectly annoying for people saving time by cutting through. Then I went to the hardware store and bought 2 industrial-grade speed bumps, the kind that make you take your coffee with a careful hand and reconsider your life choices if you try to fly over them at 30. I had them installed about 30 meters apart on my drive. I hired 2 college students, set them under a canopy with a clipboard and a cooler, printed professional-looking invoices that asked for date-time license plate and $10 maintenance fee, and I had a sign that read "Private Road Maintenance Fee, $10 per entry." Proceeds used for resurfacing and dust mitigation. Day 1 was glorious chaos. Cars rolled in expecting a shortcut, and the speed bumps turned their little time-saving joyride into a crawl. The students handed out invoices like they were giving out garnished bills at a theater, polite, firm, and unimprovable. Most people refused to pay, which was fine. The bumps did the real work. The road had been a time saver. Now it was a time sink. The look on some faces as their perfect commute turned into a slow-motion parade paid for my silence. On day 2, Uncle Henry came barreling down my drive in a Mercedes, all clipped hair and righteous indignation. He barely slowed for the first bump and cursed his car when the second forced him to stop. The student handed him an invoice. He erupted about illegal toll booths, extortion, the sanctity of community, and how dare I disrupt the public good. I walked down the driveway with my lawyer beside me and a copy of the development agreement. We explained calmly and with the kind of patient smugness reserved for people who know the fine print that the HOA had already declared the road public in writing, and therefore the HOA, or at least the people using it, were subject to lawful maintenance fees. The letter he'd mailed to everyone turned out to be his trap. Uncle Henry's face went through every shade of regret. If he admitted the letter was wrong, he'd have to explain his mistake to the whole neighborhood. If he insisted it was right, he'd conceded that the HOA had authorized use of my private property. Either path was bad for him. He stormed off without paying his $10, and the students wrote down his plate. The invoices piled up in a neat little stack. The HOA WhatsApp group imploded. People took sides. Some complained that Uncle Henry had led them astray. Others complained that I was outrageous for invoicing neighbors $10. A few people just paid because math and pride are different things, and they'd rather not have an outstanding invoice attached to their name. I deposited the payments into a separate account earmarked for road upkeep. Everything was above-board receipts, invoices, a record of what we were doing and why. A week later, traffic through my property dropped from 50-plus cars a day to maybe 3 or 4. The speed bumps had done their job, the invoices had done theirs, and the neighborhood had done what neighborhoods do, best gossip, until someone else cleans up the mess. My lawyer sent a demand letter to the HOA itemizing the road wear and tear and citing the HOA's own letter that encouraged residents to use my road. Total estimate $3,500. I fully expected angry letters, lawsuits, months of chest beating. Instead, I got silence. And after 2 weeks, a different letter arrived, this one from the HOA vice president and treasurer, not Uncle Henry. They acknowledged the error, stated the road was private, enclosed a check for $3,500, and promised a correction notice to all residents, clarifying that Exit B was private property and that using it without permission could be a trespass. In short, they paid, they corrected the record, and they spared everyone an expensive court mess, and perhaps more importantly, exposed Uncle Henry's incompetence without making the HOA look like fools for longer than necessary. I used that check to build a gate. Not some cheap bar, but a proper stone entrance with a motorized gate keypad intercom, the kind of gate that says politely and permanently, "This is private." I removed the speed bumps, paid the students a fat bonus for enduring the early chaos, and took the maintenance sign down. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Henry had tried to make my driveway public, and he effectively paid for its fortification. He stepped down as HOA president shortly after. The official story was that he wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren. The neighborhood gossip told a better story. My grandfather would have loved it. He always said the most dangerous person in any neighborhood is the one with too much free time and too little sense, and Uncle Henry submitted a thesis with footnotes. The gate stands now, keypad, remote, and perfect stonework, and every time I press the button and watch it rise, there's a little whoop in my chest that says justice is often patient and can be bought in units of $10 and heavy-duty speed bumps. If there's a moral to this, it's not just that paperwork matters, though it does, or that people who assume authority without asking usually trip over their own paperwork. It's that dignity, history, and boundaries are worth defending, and that sometimes the right kind of stubbornness paired with a touch of legal cunning saves more than asphalt. It saves respect. I didn't want a feud. I wanted my home back. The tools I used were inconvenient, legal, and yes, mildly vindictive, but they worked. So tell me, what would you have done if 50 strangers started treating your property like public land? Would you have called the cops, sued, built a gate, or rolled up your sleeves and invented a toll booth? Drop your story below. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a clipboard dictator try to reassign your life. I want to read your wins, your revenge, your close calls. And if you liked seeing a little poetic justice, say so, because sometimes the world needs a reminder that boundaries matter, and that a single well-worded invoice can do more than an argument ever will.